Hello everyone, welcome to our Orange County event vendor orientation for Asian American Expo, K-Play Fest, Anime Impulse, and Sneaker Expo.
This is the vendor orientation for our event that will be coming very soon, September 3 to 4, 2022.
And this is happening at the OC Fair and Event Center in Costa Mesa. So if you are not attending that event, you should not be watching this video. But if you are, then this video is for you.
Correct. So first, let's look over our agenda for today and the topics that we're going to be going over.
Okay, so our agenda is going to be important dates, directions in map, our floor plan, setup and decorations, show policies, COVID policies, electricity, and questions and answers.
Awesome. So let's start first. If people do want to contact us, do we have a general contact for the whole event?
Yes, it's going to be info@lights and sounds plural s.org.
Make sure it's .org, not .com. I know lots of people make a mistake on that. Now, that would be the contact for just the general contact if you don't know which of the event brands to reach out to. However, though, we do have respective contacts as well, too, for all four of the brands.
Yes, so for K-Play Fest, it's going to be help@kplayfest.com. For Anime Impulse, same thing, help@animeimpulse.com. Sneaker Expo is also help@sneakerexpo.com. And Asian American Expo is going to be info@aaexpo.com.
And yes, just to clarify, for these four, it's at .com, okay? So we want to make sure there's no confusion there. So let's jump into it. Let's talk about the move-in times for the event itself.
Okay, so we do allow vendors to move in starting Friday, September 2nd. Move-in times for Friday are going to be 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. PST. For Saturday and Sunday, which are the days of the event, September 3rd and 4th, move-in time is going to be 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. for both days. Keep in mind that these are the times that vehicles are allowed on site. After 9 a.m. on Saturday and Sunday, vehicles will not be allowed on site.
Correct. So I want to reiterate that point. If you do have lots of heavy things that you need to bring to your booth, using these move-in times is the most important because this is when you can drive your vehicle as close to the building as possible to unload. Versus, say, on Saturday morning, if you show up at 9:05, we can't allow any additional vehicles on grounds. You would actually have to park in the designated vendor or attendee lot and then actually hand cart your products from the parking lot to the building, which could be a little bit of a trek depending on what time you do show up.
Yeah, so we highly recommend, if you can, set up on Friday.
Correct. Now, onto the actual event days.
Okay, so the event itself is September 3rd and 4th, Saturday and Sunday, and the hours are going to be 11 a.m. to 8 p.m. All vendors must arrive at least 1 hour before then to make sure you have enough time to set up and prepare.
Correct. We always remind this to all vendors, even though the event does start at 11 a.m. Let's say if you're a food vendor, you do want to show up at 10 a.m., start prepping your food, making all the preparations. So the moment doors open at 11 a.m., when people come by, you are ready to start selling already because there's prep time needed. And even with any, let's just say general merch booths, you want to be preparing your change. You want to just be getting everything ready. That's why we definitely recommend that 1 hour prep time. And talking about move out now after we're done with the event itself.
So move out September 4th, Sunday. We're going to try our best to make sure we can move out at 8:30. And that move out time will last until midnight. However, what this means is if you're still selling after 8 p.m. on Sunday, it's going to be really hard for us to allow vehicles on grounds because we still have attendees who are at the event. So we need to make sure all participants are off the event grounds before we can allow cars onto the event grounds. So please make sure you stop selling at 8 p.m.
Correct. And also just to let you know, let's say if, let's say you're a merchant vendor and you're sold out of all your goods already and there really isn't much that you need to do to move out, definitely, let's say at 8 o'clock when the event ends, you can definitely just pack up the remaining stuff and just hand cart directly to the parking lot. What we're talking about is to do the reverse of move-in, which is to bring your cars again back to the buildings itself. So that work estimating is going to be around 8:30 to 8:45, but we definitely need everyone's support. We can't do this if there is, a vendor that's still trying to sell deep into like 8:15, 8:20 just to get rid of their remaining inventory. And remember, any products that are left behind after midnight at the end of the day that is not taken out, that isn't removed, will be deemed as trash and disposed of by janitorial by the OC Fairgrounds.
I know that the way we explained it might have been a little bit wordy, but if you have any questions, again, make sure you email us at any of the emails mentioned before.
Correct. Now let's look at the general layout of the OC Fair and Event Center itself. So this diagram is a nice picture that just gives you a simple, I guess, overlook of the entire event. Our 4 events combined, we're actually taking over the entire OC Fair, like all their event grounds. So this, if you can see on the left-hand side, for Anime Impulse, we have Costa Mesa, Santa Ana Pavilion, and Huntington Beach. K-Play Fest is in Los Alamitos. Anaheim, a building will have Asian American Expo and the outdoor food area in Lot I, and Sneaker Expo will be in the hangar. As you can see marked in red, that is the main entrance. So all 4 events will be sharing the same entrance to enter into the actual venue grounds. Is there anything I missed on this floor plan?
There's also the main stage, which is going to be, once you enter, if you go straight ahead, it's going to be the first thing you see, and it's going to be right in front of the hangar.
Correct. And now let's go to an even more detailed map that actually covers the parking for the event itself.
So for move in and move out. So at the top, you'll see an address. That address will take you to the general parking area.
I believe that's also the address for gate 1.
Yes. And so move in and move out, we do suggest that you enter in through gate 1 and to be able to reach all the event grounds that you need.
And on the OC Fair, their side, they will have parking control people to kind of direct you, to advise you on how to get to the building, specifically which building that you need to get to.
So parking on Friday is going to be free for setup. However, Saturday and Sunday, we're not sure what time they'll start charging. So we highly recommend that if you need to, once again, set up, that you come in on Friday.
Correct. And on the actual event day, so we're swapping to the event day map.
So we recommend gates 1 or 3 for general parking. And if you're a vendor that needs restock parking, then you can enter in through gate 8 for restock parking.
So parking is $10 per entry per vehicle, meaning if I go in on Saturday at, let's say at 9 in the morning, I have to pay $10. If I have to go out and restock it and I come back in, I actually have to pay another $10. So technically I paid $20. So we actually, if you see marked in purple, there is an option for a restock parking lot. If you are a vendor that does have a need, you plan to go in and out between the event days, we do have a separate vendor restock parking lot available that is in in the separate lot G, where you'd enter through gate 8. If you do have that request, please contact us through any of those emails so that we can see what we can do to get you passes for that lot. So the lot G lot, it's actually a much smaller parking lot, so it's not like we don't have the space to allocate for everyone. But for those that do need it, that, if you guys do anticipate having to go in and out, definitely I believe a vendor parking, the restock parking would be very, very important. So let's talk floor plans for all the events.
So for each event, if you're looking for a specific floor plan, we highly recommend that you go to your event website to find that information.
Yes, and we'll have all the plans definitely available online. And even if you don't find the detail that you're looking for to, email us. So let's talk about decoration notes, the whole decoration, how to set up the booth.
Okay, so all vendors are responsible for decorating your own booth. And we do want to emphasize that your decorations should be non-flammable. This is per OC Fire Department codes. Displays such as like lights, banners, signs, brochures, TVs, and other stuff like that, again, that is all on the vendor themselves.
Correct. And it's definitely advisable to have as much stuff as possible, because you really want to decorate your booth. On the event organizer side, depending on if you're an artist alley or a vendor booth, we just provide the basic setup, either that be a table or an actual 10 by 10 booth with the correct, with the tables and then the matching 2 chairs per space.
Right. So decoration notes. So I know sometimes you guys like to set up and maximize your space, but we do want to note that all decorations cannot exceed the space designated to you. And this is so that we have enough room for fire lanes as well. For your safety, please keep the original booth frames if you have a pipe and drape. Top cover tents, so pop-up tents, are prohibited indoors. This is, again, OC Fire Department code. And we also want to mention that helium tanks for OC Fair are prohibited. So you cannot have tanks or helium balloon sales during OC Fair. What you can do is if you have a booth set up that has helium balloons as part of the...
Like a balloon arch,
Yeah.
which we see a lot at, like, birthday parties and stuff.
Exactly. As part of the decor, it has to be fixed or taped to something that will make sure it won't fly away.
So usually what happens in that type of situation is you hire a third-party contractor that would come in, set up for you in the morning with their helium tanks, and then they would take the tanks with them off premises again. And you want to make sure, let's say that arch, it's either tethered to the actual pipe and drape frame, or there are some sort of weighted bases to keep the entire thing from flying. Let's see, on the decoration side, that kind of covers the indoors. Should we talk about the outdoors and just general food vendors as well, too?
Sure. So food vendors, one thing that we do want to know is for food vendors, all 4 sides of your booth must be enclosed. This is Health County Code. We also want to mention that food vendors have to prepare their own fire extinguishers. If you're not deep frying, all you need is a commercial grade ABC type, which is the normal red fire extinguisher that you see.
Although try to get the big one, not the really tiny one that you see at Home Depot.
And then for food vendors that are selling deep fried, you will need a K-type fire extinguisher, which is a bigger silver colored extinguisher. If you don't know what that means, you can go ahead and Google it and it should pop up.
Correct. Usually all the fire extinguishers, they will be properly labeled. So if you just look up K, like K for...
K Playfest?
Yes, K for K Playfest or K for K-pop. Just look up K-pop fire extinguisher, minus the pop. And then propane tanks, also for those that are outdoors cooking, they also need to either be zip tied to a secure structure, such as, for example, the booth leg, or stored in a tight fitted non-flammable crate. For example, I like using egg crates. I think those things are the best. The main reason why the fire department recommends or mandates all vendors doing this is to make sure that the last thing you want is the propane tank rolling away, because they're kind of circular and then running into an open flame. Which I think would be a very, very bad situation.
Right.
Correct? And then I know you just talked about having the 4 booth sides enclosed, right? And then wasn't there another restriction that we also want to make sure?
Right. So for beverages, if you're a food vendor that's selling beverages, they cannot be in any kind of glassware. So all beverages must be sold in some kind of plastic container. Or I guess if you want to be a little bit more creative, you could use other resources and materials, but it just can't be glass.
Correct. The reason why the OC Fairgrounds has a very strict policy against glass-based beverageware is because if it does fall on the ground and smash, it now becomes a public hazard, especially in between the time the spill happens and the time janitorial comes to clean it up, which is why they do not allow any glass-based wares to be used for drink dispensing.
Right.
Now, I do want to clarify, if as a vendor, let's say I'm selling vitamins, because a lot of vitamins do come already in glass pre-packaging, though, that is allowed.
Yes.
This is just for specific beverage vendors that may have novelty like beverage kind of cups that they want to sell more as a collectible as well too, just for the event.
All right, event admission. So let's talk about how to get into the event. All vendors will have a badge that labels them as a vendor as part of our event. However, the badge does not grant you entrance. It only labels you as a vendor. So if you want to enter the event, admission passes are also needed.
Correct. And we're going eco-friendly now. So for Anime Impulse, K-Play Fest, and Sneaker Expo, we're going with digital passes that will be emailed to all vendors before the event starts, so that you guys will have these in emails. If you guys did not receive them, make sure to email any of the event brands at any time to make sure either it was a typo on an email or something glitched in the system. Asian American Expo, though, for the indoor hall will be the last building that will be going with physical tickets. So either you'll need a physical ticket or a digital pass in order to grant access into the event itself.
And then we do recommend, if you can, print those passes. It's just easier to scan.
Correct. And once you are in the event, in order to get in and out, we do provide hand stamps. So on your way out of the venue, security will stamp you on your way outbound. We kind of don't stamp inbound because then it just clogs up the traffic. It's just faster to just bring people in. So we actually, if you look up right now, we actually have a sample of what a badge looks like for Anime Impulse and on the Asian American Expo side as well too. Vendors, exhibitors, they both do mean the same thing.
Sorry, the badge for Asian American Expo is separate, but the badge that says vendors in orange, that is for Anime Impulse, K-Play Fest, and Sneaker Expo as well.
Correct. And even though you have a badge, what's the reminder?
You still need your ticket.
Correct. Ticket or pass in order to get into the event. So let's talk about venue safety.
Okay, so during the event grounds and during the event hours, we will have public safety security that is patrolling the event. However, we still highly, highly, highly recommend that you take care of all your valuable goods, especially things like TVs, cash boxes, anything that's expensive. We are not reliable if it's lost or stolen, so please make sure you're taking good care of those.
Correct. Especially on the event organizer side, we're not responsible for any lost or stolen goods, so make sure to not leave any valuables behind. For me, my personal recommendation is to, kind of use some general common sense. For example, you don't want to put an open cash box out on the table while everyone at the booth decides to go back to the car to go restock and stuff too. Overall, to say the truth, with all the security, the event is very safe, but at the end of the day, we still, want to still take precautions overall. So that is on our venue safety policy. Let's now move over to the beverage policy that the OC Fairgrounds does have.
Okay, so if you're selling beverages, let's just remember that for OC Fair, it is Pepsi only. So any sodas, any waters, any juice, just be careful and make sure that you are selling a Pepsi brand product.
So if I'm a food vendor that wants to sell water, it's Aquafina, if I remember correctly?
That's correct.
Yes. So for those vendors that have, been with us at our Fairplex events, I don't want to confuse you guys. Fairplex is Coca-Cola. OC Fairgrounds is Pepsi.
Yes, so please make sure to note the difference.
Correct.
Another thing we also want to note is same thing. If a drink that you're selling is not something that Pepsi currently has as a product, then it's fine. So for example, if I want to sell K-Play Fest branded milk tea, do you think that would be okay?
Yes, that's okay. And also elaborating on that as well too, as long as the beverage, so this agreement that the OC Fair and Event Center has with Pepsi is for all canned prepackaged products. So that's why when you said the, K-Play milk tea, that's fine because that's actually something you're manufacturing on site. Mm-hmm. And in additional clarification, when it comes to all these restrictions with Pepsi though, as long as the drink though is within the Pepsi family portfolio though, that's actually allowed. I'll give you another example. I don't like name dropping random brands, but Celsius, that energy drink everyone loves drinking in the mm-hmm. office, Pepsi does have equity in Celsius. So technically, Celsius could be sold at the event. So as long as it's within the Pepsi family of drinks, then it's fine. It's not like we're restricting to just Pepsi only.
Yeah, and if you have any other questions about what works and what doesn't work, again, feel free to email us at any of those emails.
Correct. So let's talk COVID, okay? I know rates have gone down recently, but we still care about the health and safety for everybody.
Okay, so according to California state law, which is what we follow, right now we do require that all vendors either show proof of vaccination along with a photo ID, or they show a negative test taken within 72 hours of the event along with a photo ID.
Correct. And if there are any updates between the time this video releases and the time of the event, we will be posting the latest COVID guidelines on all our websites just to let you guys know. And what Jersey just talked about the negative COVID test within 72 hours, we just have that up on the slide. Right. Just remember, photo ID with a name matching your vaccination record as well too. We want to make the event honestly somewhere that is safe for all attendees, for those that are either high risk or those that are just a little bit on the safer side. So moving past COVID now, let's talk about just general, lights and sounds, pun intended. For, just electrical needs for the event itself.
Okay, so right now, electricity is not included in any of your booth fees. So if you need electricity, you will need to email us to let us know that you need it. The last day to email us to let us know that you need electricity is going to be August 24th, which is today. So make sure that you email those respective emails to put in your electricity orders. Otherwise, electricity will not be provided.
Correct. With OC Fairgrounds, they actually run all their electricity internal versus some of the other events we do. There might be a third-party vendor for it. So by August 24th, that is the deadline to actually put in your electricity order and also to send payment as well too. Most preferable method is probably through PayPal. Any orders though that start on August 25th though, we will still be taking orders. How it will be double the price. So it is to your best advantage to get everything locked in as soon as possible.
Right. And we also won't be providing any extension cords or anything like that. So make sure you bring your own electrical accessories.
Correct. And just a little bit of safety again, talking about electricity is...
Do not daisy chain your electrical cords. And if you don't know what daisy chaining is, you can look at the photo. And basically, it's when you plug an extension cord into another extension cord to try to create multiple outlets for you to plug in multiple devices. So this is really, really a fire hazard.
Yes.
If you do it like this, because over plugging an outlet will definitely lead to disastrous.
This honestly is a general safety. Like, don't do this at home either, okay? Not only for the event. This is just something that you just should not be doing. Just a general public safety awareness announcement.
Okay.
So let's go back to final reminders. I think we're about to wrap up on today.
Okay, so final reminders. All vendors need to arrive by 1 hour before before the event opens on September 3rd and 4th. So that's going to be 10 a.m. for arrival time.
Especially, I know for like, let's say K-pop anime, there are attendees, okay, that show up at 9 a.m. and they start lining up. So it's to your best advantage to honestly get there at least an hour early to make preparations. Exactly. I always remember that one picture from January, there was that line queue outside.
Oh yeah.
Why are people here at like 9? But it makes sense. And of course, passes and vaccination cards are needed to enter, okay? So this is very important. When it comes to the Vax card, we're going to be lenient in the sense that we won't need to see the actual physical card as long as you do have a a picture of it or the QR code, on your Apple wallets. We're probably fine with that as long as you also have a matching ID for it.
Right. And by passes, we mean the tickets that were either emailed to you or physical tickets and not the badges.
Correct. So now we open the floor, I guess, to just general questions. We actually have some, questions that I guess a lot of people have been asking us already. That's why we kind of want to bring these up as well too, to just let everyone kind of just ask away. So first question that we have is, can I get into Asian American Expo with a K-Play Fest ticket?
So the answer to that is yes. All events that we have during OC Fair, September 3rd and 4th, one ticket guarantees you access to all the events. So K-Play Fest, Sneaker Expo, Anime Impulse, and Asian American Expo all share the same ticket. So you're
correct. They all also technically share the same event entrance too.
That's true.
So correct. There are no restrictions if you were to buy one ticket for one event and you want to go check out another event. Everything is all shared together, one big happy family. Next question, can I bring my own power generator?
So the answer to that is unfortunately no. OC Fair, once again, is running electricity internal. So we do need to make sure all electricity is being run through them and not through your own power generator.
That is correct. And next question, how will I know how to get to whichever building I need to during move-in if I've never been to the OC Fair and Event Center?
That's a good question. So during move-in, we will have security on site who will be directing you to whichever building you need to be in. So make sure you ask them.
Correct. And then what we'll also be doing on the organizer side is that we'll also have banner signage in front of all the buildings labeling if this is Sneaker Expo's hall, K-Play Fest's hall, Anime, or Asian American Expo. So we'll do our best as well too, but definitely just follow the directions. Let the security know which brand you're going with, and then they'll know where to direct you towards. So the big question is, how close can I get to the buildings during the setup and takedown days?
So during setup, which are hours where vehicles are allowed on site, you can park as close to the building as needed to unload whatever you need to. However, I do want to mention that once you're done unloading, we ask that you move your vehicle somewhere else so that some other vendor can take that spot and unload if needed.
Correct. And the somewhere else would just be the general attendee lots or just the general queuing areas that we do have. The goal for these setup hours when you can move your car in is really just for your convenience, especially for those that have larger ticket items, for example, like TV displays or larger, I guess, shelving and stuff to display your goods. Those would be the best times during those move-in hours to bring all that stuff in. So what's the difference between an artist alley space and a vendor booth space? I know some people have been asking.
Okay, so artist alley is going to be just a 6-foot by 2-foot table and 2 chairs. And you usually are going to be sharing the space behind you with another artist who is also selling at their table. So this is all we're providing for you. So please make sure to note that for artist alley, it's just 1 table, 2 chairs. For vendor booth, it is a guaranteed 10-foot by 10-foot space with pipe and drape. You are also provided a table and 2 chairs as well. However, for the vendor booth, you get more space to set up if needed.
Correct. And I also want to comment on the vendor booth on the pipe and drape. The back wall is 8 foot tall, and then you have 3-foot side walls on both sides. One thing to know about the pipe and drapes, the pipe and drape walls are used more as a privacy divider and just to mark your space. I do not advise hanging anything more than a banner onto a pipe and drape. I've seen people try to hang a TV on it. It does not work. A TV will fall off because pipe and drape it wasn't meant for holding anything structural. So how high can I set up an artist alley table?
So that's a great question. So for artist alley tables, starting from the ground level, you can go up to 6 feet high. I also want to note that you do also have 4 feet behind you to utilize as space before it becomes the space of another artist.
Correct. So the key with most artist alley tables, a lot of people, they'll bring in their own portable shelving or some sort of I guess it's like a wire rack type of a backing to either hang up your own banner or just to hang product on it. Some people, of course, for artist alley, they'll just stack everything on the table from the front side and then just build everything up from there. So then how high can we set up a vendor booth then?
For vendor booths, you can set up as tall as the booth itself, which is 8 foot starting from the ground up.
Correct. The reason why we cap it at 8 foot is anything higher than that, you now talk about structural. It now turns into a structural conversation, probably building and safety or FD may start asking questions because after going higher than 8 feet, they're going to ask, how do you keep this thing physically up? It becomes very complicated. That's why we just keep it at 8 feet. It's a lot easier just keeping it at that. So how about a pop-up tent?
So pop-up tents, again, have a covering over the roof of it, so that is why it's prohibited indoors.
Outdoors is okay though.
Yes, if you're going to bring it for outdoors, it's fine, but we do provide booths for you outdoors as well. So the pop-up tent would most likely go behind the booth if you need to utilize that space.
Yeah, so what some vendors do, specifically food, is they will bring additional pop-up tent, maybe just to have a shade covering over, additional goods that they're planning to store, like dried goods, not obviously nothing refrigerated, like their cups, other stuff that they just don't want, I guess, being under the hot sun. However, indoors though, no pop-up tents are allowed. Technically, the exact guideline from OC Fairgrounds for indoors is actually no overhead coverings of any type. So pop-up tent is included in there. But then let's say if someone were trying to put a mesh wall all over the top of their booth to try and make it dark, that technically would not actually be allowed either. So how about playing music from the booth?
So music is okay as long as you're not disturbing your neighbors. If a neighboring vendor is asking us that your music is too loud,
it is probably too loud.
Yeah, we will have to ask that you either turn it down or turn it off.
Correct. But definitely we do advise doing music. I think it's a great experience, especially like for, let's say, K-Play Fest, to say the truth. Everyone's blasting different music. It's a great for the ambiance. Just try to respect all your nearby neighbors as well, too, that it's not like overbearing music that's like hurting people's ears.
Exactly.
So what time earliest then can someone get access to the buildings to set up on Saturday, Sunday? I know we went over this already, but I just want to go over this again.
Okay, so if you don't already know the answer, I'm going to tell you right now. It's going to be 7 a.m. on Saturday, September 3rd and 4th. At the earliest you can get into those buildings.
Correct. 7 a.m. is when the buildings will be unlocked by security, and we will have staff on site as well, too. So then we just talked about earliest. How about the latest that you can stay in the building on Saturday and the latest you can stay in on Sunday?
Okay, so the latest you can stay on Saturday is going to be 9 p.m., 1 hour after the event closes. However, for Sunday, you can stay as late as until midnight because that's when all of our vendors will be moving out.
Correct. Especially on Saturday, our goal is after the event ends, we understand vendors still need to clean up and pack their booth, but our hope is also to protect all vendors from their merchandise. We want to try and get everyone out of buildings by 9 p.m. so we can lock the buildings down on Saturday. Sunday, it's move out, so obviously everyone's trying to get out. We want to fit, the policy is, of course, everyone needs to get out by midnight or 11:59 p.m. on Sunday. So, is there Wi-Fi available at the venue?
So that's also a really great question. Wi-Fi is not provided for free, but it is available for purchase. If you would like to purchase Wi-Fi, again, you can email any of those emails mentioned before, and we can get you to the right person to make sure you have what you need.
Correct. And what is the event policy on counterfeit or gray market goods?
So Lights and Sounds as a company is very strict on gray market goods. We do not allow any counterfeit goods. And if you are found selling any counterfeit goods, we will have to revoke your vendor rights and basically escort you off the premise and no longer allow you to sell.
Correct. So for all our brands, we take any form of counterfeit very, very seriously. That's why if this is brought up to us and we realize someone is trying to sell counterfeit goods of any type, let's say fake sneakers, fake anime merch, fake K-pop merch, we would definitely have security to close down your booth and escort you off the premises and with no refund and possibly blacklist you from future events. We do take all matters such as IP very seriously because I think on the artist side, we want to respect the stuff that they've really created. So, what if my health condition does not allow me to get a COVID vaccine?
So if you're not able to get a COVID vaccine, we are accepting a negative test result taken within 72 hours of the event. So as long as you have that, you'll be good to go.
Correct. And I think the last question that we have is there a lost and found?
So each event has its own info booth, and that also is their lost and found. So if you find anything that you want to give to lost and found, just find the info booth of any of the event that you are partaking in, and they will be able to help you.
Correct. And I think that concludes the general FAQ and just for the overall orientation for just what we're going over today. And we're looking forward to seeing you guys very soon at the event. If there are any other questions, I know we beat this topic to death already, email us. Even if you send the email to the wrong event brand, we'll internally figure it out and we'll get you right to the right people.
Right. So the general email is going to be, once again, info@lights, S for plural, and sounds, also plural.org.
Got it. And I think that's it. Thank you guys so much.
Bye.
Bye.
Well, hello, everybody. Just wanted to thank you for taking the time to learn a little bit what it's like to operate a food booth in the County of Orange here. And my job here in the next little bit is to help you pass your health inspection. And not only that, I wanted to make sure that the customers that you serve are going to be served safely and that they'll have a good experience. Because my goal is that when they leave your event, they'll just think back of all the good things that they were able to experience, including the food. So, all right, I guess we'll go ahead and get started. And at the end, we'll kind of wrap it up with possible links to some questions and everything. All right. So we can go ahead to the next slide. So some of the things we'll be covering today are the general TFF requirements, and TFF stands for Temporary Food Facility. We're going to go from everything from the prepackaged foods and work our way up to the open foods. And we will also briefly touch upon the self-inspection checklist. And if you follow that checklist, you can make our inspectors' job a lot easier. So we can be in and out within just a matter of 5-10 minutes. And then the last part is going to be regarding your food preparation before the event and some of the things that may be required before you guys, if you guys need to prepare any food before the event there. So just to start off, we just want to talk about some of the general TFF requirements. And one of the main things that we'll be looking for is to make sure you have proper signage. And what this means is that you want to have your booth name. And not only do we need your booth name, but we're also going to need who the operator is. And a lot of times it may be the same as your booth name. but we also want to know where you guys are from. And so that will be including the city, state, and zip code. So your booth name should be at minimum 3 inches, and the city, state, and zip code should be 1 inch. So I know a lot of you may have signage that is already printed, but and you may not have all of the information here, but one easy way to meet the requirements is to go ahead and print this out on an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper and just put it in a sheet protector and just post it somewhere inside of your booth. And that will satisfy the requirements there. When we get to have an inspector go to your food booth, we should expect to see one person there, at least one person who we consider as a person in charge. And this person in charge will be an employee who is the person who's familiar with the food operations and can answer the questions that the health inspector may have. And the health inspector may be asking the questions about like how the food is stored or how the food is being prepared. And they may ask certain questions about food safety as well. So at least have one person there able to represent the food booth and can answer the questions that the health inspector may have. Moving on, when we go into the food booth, one of the things that we'll be checking is to make sure that your equipment and food is stored properly. And so what we mean by that is everything should be stored at least 6 inches off the ground. And the reason being is that, let's say if you have some water that is leaking from like another booth or from a water pipe somewhere, we don't want that dirty water to contaminate your food and utensils inside of your booth. And not only that, we want to make sure that the food itself is protected by having the food underneath an overhang. So it can be inside of a canopy or inside of another food booth. I don't know if you can see the picture there, but with regards to food storage, you should see 2 pictures over there. And the one on the right is an ideal example of food storage and food preparation, whereas the one on the left is something that we don't really want to see. We don't really want to see food storage on the outside, unprotected and exposed to the elements. Now we're going to start off with the basic food category types. And here in Orange County, we're going to start off with category 1A, and that means all of the foods that you have are going to be prepackaged. And so since all you're going to be selling or giving away is prepackaged foods, there's no food that's open and exposed, you have very minimal requirements. And that basically means that you're going to be having overhead protection. So if you're going to be inside of a building, that constitutes as overhead protection, and you don't need a canopy within the building there. But one of the requirements there is that all of your samples are 100 prepackaged before you get to the event. If you have to do any food prep to make those samples at the event, you would actually be considered category 2, and we'll be covering that in just a little bit. Lastly, with category 1A, since you're not really handling any food, no hand wash sink is required. So here in the next picture is a picture of prepackaged samples. And you can see here that these samples are prepackaged in like little Ziploc bags, or you can have plastic little containers with lids. And basically, this is what we consider prepackaged samples. And if you're going to be making these samples, it should be done at an approved facility. And approved facility means like at an established restaurant or another permitted facility. No open sampling is allowed with this type of category 1A for prepackaged. Moving on into the next category, that would be category 1B. And what that is you're going to have prepackaged sampling, okay? Or you may have beverage dispensing as well. And so most people, if they're going to be doing sampling, tend to fall into this category here. And so you can kind of see where on the bottom couple pictures of the category 1B, you can see how the food samples are in protected containers. Or if you're going to be sampling something that's liquid, you can also sample onto like a disposable spoon or something. And so let's say if a customer comes up for a sample, you would have either like a napkin or a disposable toothpick, and you can go ahead and open up the sealed container, get the sample, and then give it directly to the customer. Now that you're handling food, what is going to be required now that is different than the previous category 1A is that you're going to need a hand washing station. And we're going to cover that in just a little bit, but basically you're going to have a hand wash station that consists of warm water, paper towels, soap, and a catch bucket. Now with this category 1B, one disadvantage is, is if you have run out of your samples, no, excuse me, no refilling is allowed. So you want to make sure that you have all of the samples that you're going to need for the duration of that day's event. If you do want to make samples at the site, then that would bump you up to a category 2, and we would have to, and we'll kind of review that requirements in just a moment here. So there's a lot of different ways of doing sampling and dispensing for the customers for whenever they want a sample. And so what you want to do is that the easiest way and the best way to keep within, to be within compliance is to individually hand the customers out the samples. And what I mean by that is, let's say if you have a customer there, they want to try a sample, you're going to individually get a little sample and then give it out to them. What we don't want to see is a platter full of samples that is exposed to the elements, okay? And because if you go that route, a person who may have dirty hands can contaminate the samples that are out there. Someone can cough and sneeze and contaminate the food as well. So we want to minimize the chance of contaminating or soiling the samples that is being provided to your potential customers. You can kind of look at the examples over here. And one other thing I just want to mention is that if your sample is what we consider PHF, and that stands for potentially hazardous foods, you want to make sure that they are held at proper holding temperatures. And we'll get into that a little bit, but basically if the food is meant to be held at being cold temperature, you want to make sure that the sample is being served cold. And if the sample is being served hot, it should be served at above proper holding temperatures. Now moving on to category 2, and this will be the majority of the food booths at your event. That will be open foods. And this includes food prep for food sampling. Okay, that would bump you up to category 2. And so what that requires is that, one, you have a canopy, and that canopy has to have a full enclosure. Okay. Now, if you're going to be category 2 inside of a building, you will not need a canopy or the enclosure. What you will need, though, inside of your food booth for a category 2 is that you're going to need a fully stocked hand wash station. Another requirement of a category 2 open food is having a 3-compartment sink. And this 3-compartment sink is required because you need a way to properly wash, rinse, and sanitize your utensils and equipment. And so that's what the first compartment is for. The first compartment is going to be used for washing your equipment. And that's going to be done with hot water and soap. And basically you're going to be, just like what you do at home, washing the soiled equipment and utensils. The middle compartment, the second compartment, is basically meant for rinsing. And that's going to be done by rinsing off any of the soap and remaining food debris. And the last compartment of the 3-compartment sink is a sanitizing step. And that there is where you're going to be soaking your equipment and utensils in a proof sanitizer. and that will be done for either 30 or 60 seconds, depending what type of sanitizer that you are using. Okay, but each 3-compartment sink needs to have sanitizer. It needs to have the drain plugs, and it needs to have hot water of 120 degrees. And those are the requirements of a 3-compartment sink. And if you're going to be outside, the one additional requirement of the 3-compartment sink is that it needs to have overhead protection with a canopy. Also, depending where you're going to be at, we do ask that you do not use the 3-compartment sink to refill your water supply for your food booth usage, because what that's going to do is that's going to drain the hot water of that 3-compartment sink, and it will affect all of those food booths that are sharing that 3-comp sink. And we do allow sharing of the 3-comp sink of up to 8 food booths. And so if one person is, for instance, taking all of the hot water, then that is going to possibly affect the operations of the other 7 food booths. So you want to make sure that you're only doing washing, rinsing, and sanitizing of your equipment utensils at the 3-comp sink, and not necessarily draining all the hot water there. Now, in terms of sanitizer, what you're going to be responsible for is you need to provide either bleach, chlorine, okay, or another approved sanitizer is quat ammonia. And so most people that we see in community events such as yours is people are going to provide bleach. And the reason being is because it's very easy to get. You can just go to like Target or Walmart, pick up a bottle, and a bottle only costs, $4 or $5. Whereas quat ammonia, it tends to cost a lot more. And that goes maybe 25, 30, I've seen maybe even higher than that, to $40, $50. So most people use bleach. And if you're going to use bleach, you do want to make sure that you have your appropriate test strips, and you can get them at Restaurant Depot or even like on Amazon. And just make sure that they're chlorine test strips. And one major distinction of how you can tell that is an appropriate one is that they are usually white in color. And when you dip it into the sanitizer, it should turn to like a light purple color. And that would indicate 100 parts per million. That's what we want to see. If you happen to be using quat ammonia is usually orange test strip, and that will turn to like an orange-green color at 200 parts per million. What you do not want to use are the test strips for chlorine that are meant for swimming pools or spas. Those are a little bit different. And so just make sure you get the little paper ones that are white in color and meant for restaurant operations. Now, moving on to the hand wash stations. And once again, hand wash stations are required for your category 1B, and that is for food booths that are doing sampling, as well as for open food preparation. And so basically, you can kind of see in the picture here for the hand wash stations, what you want to have is an igloo type container or a Cambro unit. And that is required because it's going to have to hold and maintain warm water of 100 to 108 degrees Fahrenheit. And then you're also going to need a soap pump, paper towels to dry your hands. And then underneath your nozzle, you're going to have like a catch basin, like an empty trash can or an empty bucket. And that will catch all of the wastewater as you wash your hands. Now, one thing that is not really shown here that well, but you want to make sure you have the proper lever for your hand wash station. And what I mean by that is you want to have a lever that will turn on, and then you can wash your hands uninterrupted. Because a lot of times when you buy the igloos, they have a little push button to allow water flow. And unfortunately, when your hands are dirty or soapy, it just makes it a lot harder for you to properly wash your hands without getting it contaminated again. So make sure you can get the attachment, change it out. Once again, you can get that on Amazon or a local Home Depot. Sometimes they carry it as well, and just change it out and then have all the other items there. Okay. And lastly, just make sure, as a reminder, that you have the hand wash station inside of your food booth. Now, I just want to kind of review the proper hand washing procedures. So you want to wash your hands when you first get to the food booth before you start handling any equipment or utensils. Okay. You also want to wash your hands after using the restroom. You also want to wash your hands before putting on gloves. You also want to wash your hands after handling raw foods. Okay. You want to wash your hands after touching any part of your body. And so a lot of times when you're at the food booths, you're going to be like scratching your head, scratching your hair. You can be touching your arm or something like that. So if you do that, you want to wash your hands before handling any food. And of course, if you touch anything that's dirty, like a trash can or something that you dropped on the ground and stuff. Okay. And so just going back to the glove usage, people think that wearing gloves is a sanitary method of handling food, which it can be. But what you want to do is before you put the gloves on, you want to wash your hands. And then let's say if you get those gloves dirty because you touched something that's dirty, you want to basically take off those gloves. And before you put on a new pair of gloves, you want to wash your hands again and then put a new pair of gloves on. And then lastly, if you or any of your employees are not feeling well, like you may have some like fever, vomiting, diarrhea, they should not be working at a food booth. Okay. And that goes with any type things because you may be shedding viruses and bacteria and you may not realize it. And then you're thus contaminating the food and then possibly getting your customers sick. So if you're not feeling well, don't work at the food booth. Now, another thing I want to address is the proper holding temperatures of food. So depending on what you guys are doing, we want to make sure that you guys are having the food that is what we can consider potentially hazardous. You want to be holding them at proper holding temperature. So on the cold end, you want to make sure that food is being held at 41 degrees or lower. And on the hot end, you want to make sure food is being held at 135 degrees and higher. Now, for community events such as yourself, if you're going to be holding food at 45 degrees or lower, that is allowed. However, the caveat is that after basically at the end of the day of your operation, you're going to have to destroy that food, meaning just basically dump it in the trash. So what I recommend is that you keep all the foods on the cold end at 41 degrees or lower. Now, if your food is continuously held under mechanical refrigeration, okay, meaning at least 41 degrees and lower, that food can be saved. So let's say if you're going to be having food that's cold and you have the electrical means, you can bring a refrigerator. And that refrigerator, if the food is being held at 41 degrees and lower, you can use that throughout the weekend. Now, how do you guys tell the temperatures of the food? Well, what you want to have is a probe thermometer. And what I mean by a probe thermometer is that it basically has a stick, and at the end of the thermometer has a means of telling the temperature. And so once again, you want to make sure it's 41 degrees and lower on the cold end, and 135 degrees and higher on the hot end. So if you guys are cooking food over there, we want to see you guys taking the temperature of the food, okay, and making sure that it is at proper cooking temperatures. And then when it is moved over to being hot held, it should be at 135 and higher. We do not want to see any of those laser type thermometers, like the little laser guns that have kind of become popular during the past couple of years. And the reason being is that those type of laser temperature thermometers only tell you the temperature on the outside of the food. And what we're looking for is actually the core temperature of the food that's being held. So I also want to show you some examples of improper hot and cold holding temperatures. And you can kind of see on these coolers here, the food itself is most likely you're not going to be at proper holding temperature of 41 degrees and lower. And the reason being is every time that you're opening and closing the coolers, you're letting a lot of cold air out and warm air in. And doing that repeatedly and consistently over a period of time, the food temperature that's inside of the cooler is going to be starting to rise up above 41 degrees. Another thing is that you can kind of see in the picture to the right, the food itself may not be effectively insulated with ice. And so the picture, you can kind of see the ice is along the bottom. Well, what good is that going to do with in terms of keeping the proper food temperature for the exposed food that's along the top where the air is being exposed? What you want to make sure that you do is that if you guys are using an ice chest, is that you want to properly insulate the food that's being held cold with ice packs or ice. So you may have to start off with putting the ice along the bottom as well as the sides. And as you put the food in, you're going to have to put the food in and put maybe a layer of ice or have some ice packs, and then put more food in and putting more ice and ice packs. So as the food is being grabbed, the food that's below it or whatever is being exposed will have adequate means of being held at cold temperatures. Now, once again, just reiterating some of the food booth requirements. If you're going to be outside in the parking lot over there, you want to make sure that you do have a canopy. And then if you're going to be doing food prep or plating of food, you want to make sure that you have an enclosure. And what enclosure will usually consist of like a netting. And that netting can have pass-through windows. And those pass-through windows can allow you to serve your guests properly. But also, especially if you're going to be doing any cooking outside, you should be able to pass the cooked equipment, or excuse me, cooked food through the windows to be brought inside of the food booth for plating and hot holding. And you kind of see how that one food booth on the left side with a kettle corn is totally open on one end. And, that will allow, usually vermin and things to get on in there. Moving on to the next slide here, we're going to be talking about a little bit more about open food cooking. And so in Costa Mesa here in Orange County, we do allow cooking to be outside, okay? And that's actually required from the fire department, the local fire jurisdiction. And so we're okay with you guys doing that. But what we want to see is that, one, you are cooking outside in a safe manner. So one, the cooking equipment should be separated from the customers, okay? And you can do that by having like wood. You can kind of see in a picture over here. That kind of creates a barrier. Or you can have stanchions or just anything to keep the customers from getting direct access to the cooking elements there. And so that will do a couple of things. One, makes it less likely for the customer to potentially contaminate the food. Let's say if they're coughing or sneezing. But two, let's say if someone trips, all right? When someone trips, what happens with their arm? They kind of reach out the arm to prevent themselves from falling flat in their face. And then that will also prevent them from reaching out and potentially putting their hand out onto any exposed cooking equipment that you may be doing. So it helps you guys in limiting your liability for injury, okay? But also helps protect your food. As soon as the food is cooked to the proper cooking temperature, what you want to do is bring that food back into your food booth for proper hot holding and plating. Now, what you can also do is once the food has been, or your customers have ordered the food, let's see if you're cooking like burgers or something. You can actually serve the customers directly from the cooking grill directly onto the plate of the customer. So that is allowed. Okay. But usually from what we've seen, the food, once it's cooked, is usually brought back into the food booth for hot holding and plating. Now, many of you may be having condiments on the outside, and that is okay with us as long as you are protecting the condiments that are out there. So for the food that's outside of the booth, you see that little picture there. We do allow bottles and bulk pumps for the dispensing of condiments, but what we do not want to see is any uncovered foods out there. And you can kind of see with the picture, you should not have any exposed uncovered foods like onions or peppers or anything like that. Everything should come in either the individual packets or in a bulk dispenser, like what you may see like in Costco or something. So if you happen to be doing any prep work inside of your food booth, let's say if you're going to be using a cutting board, well, what you want to do is you can take that cutting board back to the 3-comp sink for proper warewashing. Okay. But a lot of times you may be also having to wipe up some of the counter surfaces and cutting boards and stuff. You may be needing to use that for your further food prep. And so to help prevent contamination is that you do want to have your sanitizer and wipe down the food surfaces where any of the animal juices may be. And basically what you want to do is wipe them down, and that will help prevent any cross-contamination, let's say from raw chicken to like raw vegetables that you may be serving as well. Now, what your event organizers will do is that they're going to provide with you what we call a self-inspection checklist. And so you can kind of see on this checklist here, you're going to have the 3 different categories. You're going to have the category 1A, 1B, and category 2. And basically, with whatever category you're in, you want to make sure that you check off all of these requirements here. If you do this before the health inspector gets to you, we can be in and out very fast, because basically what we're going to do is go in, verify that you have done these things, okay, and we can be in and out within 5-10 minutes. And once again, this will be provided to you from your event organizers. If you happen to lose this self-inspection checklist, usually the health inspector will have some extras on hand, and they will pass them out the day of the event. Some of the things that we will be checking for is your food sources. And what I mean by that is for community events like yours, you want to make sure that you purchase your food from what we consider approved food sources like a grocery store, because that has been inspected. We want to make sure that your receipts are kept and are from the same day of your event. Now, if you are going to be having like wholesale foods that are being drop shipped from like a warehouse or something, make sure you list that on your health permit application, because we want to make sure that the sourcing of where the food is coming from is proper. Now, if you're going to be getting some of the food that's that you need to purchase ahead of time, whether you need to store it at another place, or if you need to do any food prep, make sure you list that on your application as well, because we do have some ways of allowing you guys to do that. And that can be done through what we call a shared kitchen food facility review form. And so basically it is a short document saying that, one, you're storing or preparing the food at an approved facility. And so both you, the food operator, as well as the restaurant operator, signs off on it. Okay, so if you're going to be having to do that, make sure you include that with your application, and that can help save a lot of headache with my staff who needs to review your application. Okay. If you're going to be doing it just for this event, you can use a limited term food production agreement. But if you're going to be doing this at multiple events in Orange County, you're going to need the actual shared food facility review form, because you yourself can get your health permit, and it will actually save you money in the long run in terms of food production. If the restaurant that you are working with is outside of Orange County, we do have a separate document for that as well. And that document needs completed, as well as providing a permit from the restaurant that you're operating out of. Okay. And then lastly, since this is an Asian themed event, we recognize that there are a lot of foods that is normally served at room temperature, right? Let's take boba, for example. Boba is good at basically room temperature, but let's say if you were to hold it at cold temperatures, what happens to that boba? It gets hard, right? It's not as pleasant to chew. And likewise, if you keep it at hot temperatures at 135 or higher, it gets kind of gummy and not really pleasant to eat as well. So the texture kind of changes. And so you can kind of see some examples here of what we consider foods that are actually potentially hazardous. And what we mean by potentially hazardous is that it has a potential of growing bacteria or viruses within that. And since the food tends to be best served at room temperature, there are certain documentation that we can have you guys follow. And basically the food can be held at room temperature up to 4 hours. And we have this documentation here, what we call TPHC, time as a public health control. And this TPHC form basically allows you to hold the food at proper temperatures, improper holding temperatures, up to 4 hours. And you just have to document it, basically what the food item is, and when you have started that time of being out of proper holding temperatures, and then what you're going to be doing after the basically 4 hours. And we know in your case that most of the foods will usually be sold within the 4 hours, but we just need to have you guys document that the food is whatever batch you guys are doing is being held and not being going past the 4 hours. And that's the form that you'll be using here. Okay. If you have any questions about this, you can submit the questions, and I'll go over that in just a second here. But also include your food items that you need to include on your health permit application. Any food items that need to be held at room temperature, such as boba or spring rolls or whatever. Okay. So during the event, the inspector will come on by. They'll be checking to make sure you have your health permit. They'll be asking the person in charge to see, ask them any questions that we feel may be relevant for your food booth operation. And if everything is in order, we can be in and out real fast. So that's pretty much it. If you do have questions, you can feel free and give us a call on our TFF hotline, and that is 714-433-6080. Or you can send us an email over at ehspecialevents@ocHCA.com. And if you need any documentation such as the TPHC forms or the self-inspection checklists or any other general questions, feel free to reach out to us, because we want to help expedite your health inspection and make sure that you're doing it in a safe manner as well. So yeah, I think that's about it. So I hope to see you guys soon, and I hope that you guys have a successful event. Thanks for having me, guys.